Shonda. How are you?
I'm so good. How are you? So nice to see you.
Yeah, so nice to meet you. I'm so excited to talk to you and get to know you a little bit. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell me about your company?
Okay, great. So my name is Shanda Zelaya. That's my husband's last name. um, and I have been a floral designer for, well, maybe I should say I've had my business for going on 4 years. It'll be 4 years in August. So it'll be our little anniversary in mid-August. But I've been doing weddings and events since I started my business, but I've been doing flowers, I would say, for maybe 12 years, kind of like as a hobby. It was never
Okay.
a business. It started as a hobby. I would do it for my mom, and she'd have dinner parties, and I'd do it for that. But it was never anything I thought more about. But 4 years ago, a complete stranger actually inspired me to start my business. And so I did. I kind of just
Okay.
jumped in head first. Um, and and I did. I tend to be very impulsive sometimes, and sometimes it's a great thing, sometimes not so much. In this particular case, it was great because now I have this little business that I considered my child, and it's growing, and it is a teenager. It's not fully, it's not an
Yeah,
adult
right.
yet, but it's
I don't know if it ever gets there.
it's definitely on its way. But yeah, I'm originally from Costa Rica. I was born there, and I came to the States when I was 9 years old with my mom and my brother. We grew up in Brooklyn. I grew up in Brooklyn.
Oh, okay.
Um, and then we moved to Virginia when I was maybe about 17, like 16, 17. We moved to the DC metro area in Virginia, and I've been here ever since.
Oh, that's awesome. So tell me what it was like when you moved here from Costa Rica, because I'm sure it's completely different. So yeah, tell me about like your environment and what how that affected you.
Great question. So it was very different. Um, I come from, a Latin American country, so English was my second language, or is my second language. And we came here, I mean, I had barely finished maybe first, second grade, and I was thrown into a school system that I wasn't very familiar with.
Oh my
Uh,
goodness.
and thankfully, both of my parents were bilingual. So even though they were born and raised there in Costa Rica, they were able to teach my brother and I, they would speak to us in both languages.
Yeah.
So English kind of came as a second nature language to me, but I still like struggled a little bit in school just because the structure was very different. And the way of learning is very different. But, within a couple of years, the nice thing about being young is that you can adapt
Yeah.
and you can easily be molded.
Yeah.
Um, so that helped me, but the culture shock was definitely something that I think stuck with me more. So being being a Black person and growing up in Brooklyn, in the neighborhood where we lived was mostly African American. It wasn't the greatest neighborhood at the time. This was in the 90s. I think New York City wasn't known as the greatest city, for its safety back in the 90s. It was so. I think a lot of my peers in school um, would assume that we were from the same culture, but we weren't. And I remember being bullied in school because I was different some way. I looked the same,
Yeah.
but I was different.
Yeah.
So sometimes I didn't know how to express myself
Hmm.
in English. Like there were certain words that I would try to like reach for. Um, and so like, if it didn't come to me quickly enough, or if I didn't say the right word, maybe to mean like what I wanted to say,
Yeah.
this is like third, fourth grade,
Hmm.
right? So kids could be a little mean.
Yeah, they
Um,
sure can.
yeah, and so that I think stuck with me more than the actual, you know, having to transition from one school to the next. It
Mm-hmm.
was just more like a culture shock,
Yeah.
honestly. And so like, you know, you were bullied a little bit in school and, you know, kind
Do you
of
think it
treated
made you a
differently.
tougher person?
Eventually it
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
Eventually. At first it didn't. At first it kind of broke me. At first I just didn't understand,
Yeah.
right? Like I didn't understand, like, why are people so mean? Or
Yeah.
why, you know, Costa Rica is all about like pura vida, right? Like take it easy.
Yeah.
Like my whole family is that way.
Mm-hmm.
And in New York is not. New York is grit,
Yeah, it
right?
sure is.
New
Yeah.
York is grit, and either you make it or you don't. So at first it kind of broke me. But then when I went into like the middle school age, then it was a whole other story. Um, I became a little tougher. I was a little rough
Yeah.
around the edges,
Mm-hmm.
rebellious for sure. Um, so all of that happened, and then so much so that that's one of the reasons we moved out of the city, because I was so
Oh, okay.
rebellious. I got into this in you know, into this fight, or be beaten type of
Yeah.
mentality. And
That's
so
tough.
my mom would, yeah, she was a single mom at the time. So she made the decision to move out of
Yeah.
New York City, and she had a friend that lived in Virginia. And her friend was like, well, why don't you just come and check it out and see if you like it? And, you know, so she did. And she was, and I remember her one day coming to us, it's like, hey guys, we're moving.
And the rest is history, right?
And the rest is kind of history, but it definitely did um, change the way I looked at life growing up in New York. And even, not even my own experiences, I would even say my mother's experience. And I think my work ethic comes from my mother,
Yeah.
because when we first came to this country as an immigrant, right, like you don't really know what to expect. We weren't necessarily coming to stay. Like we were only coming for a couple of months on vacation, and my aunts, who were already citizens in the US, kind of convinced my mom to like, well, why don't you just get your citizenship or get your residency and just stay? Like, why are you going to go back? And like, we didn't have a need, right, to come to this country. Like a lot of immigrants come
Yeah.
because there's a need. We didn't have that.
Mm-hmm.
It was more of a personal issue within my family.
Yeah.
Anyway, when we came here, this long story short, my mom, her first job was taking care of an elderly lady right across the street from where we lived. And we lived with my aunt at the time, and the elderly lady my mom took care of, her salary, my mom's salary, this was in 1992, was $40 a week. And with those $40 a week, my aunt would have my mom give her half of that, because we ate cereal and milk, and you know, kids ate food, and my
Sure.
aunt was like, hey, we need to cooperate. So my mom really only made $20 a week for herself when we first came to this country. And she worked like that for about a year and a half, and that's her salary. And I still remember my mom would take us to the movies sometimes. She would take us to go get ice cream sometimes. It wouldn't be always. She would
Yeah.
take us sometimes to like Central Park, and like we would walk around and buy like, you know, peanuts.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like the fun
Oh,
New York things that you do. And I didn't realize it at the time, but watching my mom work as hard as she did
yeah.
created this work ethic in me that I have now as an adult. I
Yeah.
didn't have it as a child or while I was growing up, but now as an adult, I'm a hustler. Like I grind,
Yeah.
and I
Moms
think
are so important. It's
I
crazy.
think my mom taught me that without saying a word.
Yep.
Without saying a word, she taught me that, and I work hard today.
Oh, well, it shows. I mean,
Yeah.
your website is really beautiful. So tell
Oh,
me
thank you.
about Flor de Casa.
Yeah, so Flor de Casa. So that is what it stands for, is House of Blooms or House of Flowers. And it's in Spanish. I knew I always wanted to have a Spanish name for my business because of where I'm from.
Mm-hmm.
It resonated with me. And I think it makes me feel kind of like I'm still connected to my roots.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's where the name comes from. And it wasn't the first name my business had. we have evolved. We have
Yeah.
grown up a little bit. The first business name we had, my husband is the one who helped me choose it. And this was literally on a car ride. We were driving home from our first year anniversary. This is where it all started. I met this one stranger. My husband had taken me to a bed and breakfast for our first year anniversary. And while there, I'm talking to the caterer and I'm showing her pictures of my wedding. And she says, oh, well, who did your flowers? And I said, I did. And she says, well, what's the name of your business? And I said, oh, excuse me? This is just like a thing I do on the side. This is not, like a business. And she asked me why. And I didn't really have an answer for her. I was just like, oh, I don't know why. So we left that weekend, and in the car ride home, I'm talking to my husband. I'm like, do you think I could do this? Like, is this like, feasible? And he says, well, if you don't give it a shot, then, you'll never know. So
Yeah.
he was thoroughly supportive of me through that kind of like discovery phase. And in that same car ride home, he was like, I asked him, I'm like, well, what am I going to name it? And he was like, my initials are SZ.
Yeah.
So he was like, well, why don't you just name it SZ Flowers? I'm like, who's going to say that? No, that's gonna
It's a little it's a tongue twister.
Nonetheless, I was like, okay, fine. So that lasted for about 1.5 years. And then I was like, no, this is just not going to work. And so I gave it a lot of thought, and I like really intentionally tried to pick something that would last for many years to come and still be true to me. And so there's where Flor de Casa was born. And
I love that story.
Yeah.
That's awesome. What do you think is your, or was, or is your biggest hurdle so far, being a business owner?
Mm-hmm. I think one of the biggest hurdles is learning or knowing that I can't dwell on what I can't control. So I think as business owners, sometimes we get very caught up in the environment around us. And I think one of the largest hurdles is not comparing myself to someone who maybe has been doing this for 20 years. And I've been doing it for 4. Or being able to step away from, maybe not step away, maybe step away isn't the best term, but maybe just realizing that I can't control, for example, like as a business owner, as a woman, as an immigrant, as a Black woman, there's certain things that I can't control. Like I can't control people's beliefs. I can't control people's actions. I can't control people's reactions. I can't control, what people love, what people hate. Like there's so many factors that I can't control. And I think one of my personal biggest hurdles was trying to mold myself into fitting what all these other people would think I need to fit. Like into molding myself into what other people think or thought that I should be. And it took a long time. And I don't know if that is, or if that comes with growth as a business and as a person, or maybe it's a combination of both. But as a business owner, it's really hard to not mold yourself or try to become what everybody else wants you to be.
Yeah, staying true to yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of my biggest challenges. I feel like I'm much more comfortable in my skin now than I was before. And when I say in my skin, I mean like literally like in my skin and in my business. I'm much more comfortable now than I was, 4 years ago when I started, right? And I'm not as insecure as I was when I started.
Yeah.
But being able to overcome all of those insecurities and being able to overcome everything that people
Yeah.
are saying you should do and deciding for yourself what you need to do, it was a really big challenge. And I think I've finally gotten to a place where I tune this out
Yeah.
a lot. Like I don't listen to this a lot. Like I don't follow a lot of the designers in my area. I follow some,
Yeah.
not a lot, because a lot it just brings me back to a place where I'm just
Yeah.
like, oh, that's what I should be doing, or
Mm-hmm.
because that's what everybody else is doing, so I need to do that
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
And it's not true.
So on your website, and I love this, you say that your events are thoughtfully curated to be an extension of your couple's character. Tell me about that, because I love that.
Oh yes. So my couples are probably one of the main sources of inspiration, right? So I love working with couples who are like eclectic
Yeah.
and they like think out of the box, and sometimes they don't know what they want, but they can kind of describe what they want as best they can, and it's my job to really get to know them personally so
Mm-hmm.
that I can design for them, right? Exclusively for you. Like this, like I've
Yeah.
made bouquets that I will probably never make again. Right. I've made, and I, not because I don't want to, I just feel like I can't, because I feel
Right.
like that was exclusive to that couple or to
Yeah.
that bride, or, you know what I mean? Like, so when I say that I curate my events to show like an extension of my couple's character and what they feel, it's because I really do. I take them into account. I talk to my
Yeah.
couples so much. I ask them a million questions whenever we go through our like inquiry process.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a questionnaire they fill out, then they jump on the phone with me and I ask them a dozen other questions, and then like our proposal process has tons of questions in it. So I want to really get to know who these
Yeah.
people are, and that's the only way I can really design from my heart to them, because I literally feel like I'm giving you a piece of my soul when I'm designing for you. So I want to make sure that this little piece of me that I'm giving you is reflective of who you are, who you want to be.
On your blog, you recently posted that there were 5 things that you did to sort of ground yourself with this whole COVID-19. And here's 5 things that, Shonda does or practices to help, just in these really weird times right now, and,
Yeah.
events being canceled, and, as creative people, flowers make us happy, and, to take that away from us, it really is so detrimental to our mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Just talk about that a little bit, about your 5 points, because I really do love that blog post.
Oh, thank you. So trying to remember now. I was like,
The first one was the Bible.
I do. So I'm a Christian, so I read the Bible. I try to read it on a daily basis, even if it's just a chapter or two, and then I like meditate on it and I reflect on it. Like I don't want to get preachy, but it's something that I find that fuels me, and it feeds my soul, and it's like I have a strong faith, and so it just helps me like breathe easy, like to start my day.
Yeah, for those people that may not want to do that, how about read a good book?
Exactly, read a good book. Read something inspirational.
Right.
Exactly, read something inspirational. Read something that gives you a little like sense of like, oh, this was it.
Yeah. Well, I think too, you kind of escape in the pages a little bit,
Yeah.
So number 2 is daydream.
I'm a huge daydreamer.
I love daydreaming.
So sometimes I'm in the shower and I'm getting dressed or whatnot, and I'm talking to myself, right? I'm having legit conversations with myself. But these are like my daydreams, right? Like I daydream to the T, like detailed daydreams about where I want to take my business next or where I want to go next. My husband and I are huge travelers. So I daydream about that. I daydream about my dream home.
Yeah.
I daydream about one day having kids, one day kind of in a little further down the road, but one day, yeah. Like I daydream about what they would look like. I daydream about like, you know, how, you know, what I would say to them when I'm mad at them, like all these things. And I
Yeah.
think it just takes you away from all the craziness happening around us
Yeah.
right now. So I daydream about my weddings. I daydream about my brides. I'm just like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, what if I did this? And like, and
Yeah.
I fill my mind with beautiful thoughts and beautiful things because if I didn't do that, I think I would be super stressed
Yeah.
and it would just be burden to have my business versus a joy.
For family.
My family is my rock, my core, my solid, my stronghold. My husband is my constant. He's the one that has been and will always be the first person I turn to. My brother is also, he and I, we have struggled together, we have suffered together, we have smiled together. If there's one person aside from my mom in this earth that knows everything that we have been through is my brother. So
Yeah.
he and I are like this.
Mm.
We are a year and 9 months apart.
Mm.
And so we are really close, really, really close. I don't know. He's the one who gave us our, when we got married, when my husband and I got married, he was the one who gave us our talk,
Oh yeah, during the reception. Yeah.
no, for the
Oh.
ceremony. Um,
Oh, the officiant.
yeah. He's the one who did it and it was great.
Oh, love that.
So yeah, so my family is key and I consider some of my best friends family. I mean, I talk to them on a daily basis. We cry together, we laugh together, we hug together, we celebrate each other's wins. They keep me grounded. They all keep me super grounded.
5, relax.
Ugh,
I think everyone
massages,
needs to
yeah,
relax.
massages are my jam. Massages and traveling are my jam.
That's awesome.
So whenever before COVID, my husband and I typically plan about 3 to 4 trips a year. Like every 3 months, I'm just like, let's go. Like even if it's for 4 days,
Yeah.
or 5 days, that's one of the reasons I opened my business is because I didn't want to be tied down to a specific schedule.
Yeah.
Now, granted, my corporate job was great. Like I actually traveled a lot for that job. I was a marketing manager there, so I had to like do lots of travel within the U.S. But it was for work, so it's a little bit different than when you travel for pleasure. So relaxing and just disconnecting is key for my mental sanity and like my spiritual well-being. I'm just like I need to like disconnect. I need to breathe. And if I just need to either sit on a beach or even if I'm in a different city, like, but I just need to disconnect. Like, even if we don't travel far away, we might travel to, I don't know, New York, or we've gone to Montana, we've gone to Vegas and California, just somewhere that's not the routine. Because that way I find that I can disconnect and I can, when I come back, then I'm feeling recharged until 3 months later. And I'm like, okay, it's time to go again.
Yeah.
I work that actually into my wedding schedule. So there's weekends I block off because I know that I don't want to, it's
mental health days.
Yeah, it's mental health days.
Shonda, thank you so much for taking the time and telling us your story. I love you. I think you are an amazing person, an incredible designer for designing for 4 years. I mean, your work is really beautiful.
Thank you.
And I'm so glad that I can celebrate you today. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. You know, sometimes you doubt yourself. You doubt whether you're doing well. You doubt whether, you know, your business is going to grow. You doubt whether, you know, people will recognize you. you doubt, so much doubt is
Yeah.
always creeps in. So being able to speak with you and have you literally like go through my site and read my blogs and like listen to what I have to say is so refreshing to me. And it kind of gives me that validation, like you're doing good.
You
So if
are.
anything, thank you so much
Um,
for taking the time to give me that recognition, because it means the world to me. And it makes me feel like I made the right choice
you sure
in
did.
pursuing this passion of mine that I didn't know I had until I would say later in life.
Well, you sure did. Thank you again for coming
Well,
on.
thank you. I really appreciate it.